Hello and welcome to Verde Broadcasting as usual. I am joined today by director of Robodoc, Chris Griffiths. As you could probably tell by the graphics and shit what I done made. We already did this, didn't we, Chris? But owing to some technical issues, we're doing it again, which I'm deeply sorry about. But it seems like the timings and stuff may have helped a bit. So
it's worked out well, and I mean I think I looked a bit better last time, whereas I look like I'm proper scraggy this time.
Mate, the one thing I found is that all things are equal now. Like looking like shit, sounding like shit. Like it's fine. Don't worry. Yeah. Everybody's in the same boat.
It's the COVID-19 look. So,
yes,
the beard's grown a bit subsequently. So no, I like it. It's a man chat this time. Last time was kids play, but
no, it's all about. And I've had my beard done by a dog groomer since we last spoke. So. You know, it's all gravy, mate. It's all gravy. So we're here to talk about Robodoc, your film that was crowdfunded and is currently in the editing process. It's been quite. How long ago just to reiterate? How long ago did you complete your crowdfunding and your shoot? And where are you at the moment?
So production was 2016. Mm-hmm. And I think we all thought, like, yes, it'll be out for the film's 30th anniversary, 2017. But as we all know, it isn't. And so here we are now, 4 years later, still very much in post-production, although, you know, a lot further down the line in post-production. Yeah, that's the latest update, and use this as an opportunity to air out all those mysteries about this project and why it's taking so long.
Plug. Just say anything you want to say in regards to that, please do. I forgot to. I think last time I did, so I declared my biases. So I need to declare my bias. Chris and I are mates, and we've worked together and stuff. So this isn't going to be like some Newsnight Paxman takedown. You know what I mean? Like,
what happened to you, Rich? You used to be cool, man.
It was the long game. I was playing the long game, Chris.
Yeah. All to this very moment.
Yes, yeah. No, I'm actually in the next room. So I crowdfunded Robodoc myself before I knew you and before I worked with you. You know, going back a few years, I crowdfunded myself. Knowing you, have got a bit of an inside track on it because you've been sending me bits and giving me previews for a while, and obviously, like I asked you loads about it when we were away working together because.
Yeah, man.
I really want to see it, man. Like, you know, this is a project I'm really interested in. Oh, mate, massively. So, and I was saying the other day, I can't remember who to, I think perhaps to Ivan or to Duncan, I was just saying, like, you know, if you think you know a lot about Robocop, you don't know shit until you speak to Chris Griffiths or Gary or Adam or all those guys, because just to be clear, it's fucking comprehensive, right? Who have you spoken to for this stuff?
Very, very, very comprehensive. All right, I'll tell you what, I'll give you the sort of storied version. So we knew I knew I'd love to make a doc on Robocop, and it all came from a chance meeting with the writer Ed Newmeyer when we were shooting our Fright Night documentary in 2015. And he made the fatal error of when we had that conversation. When he basically, I messaged him on Facebook, and I was like all gooey-eyed like a fanboy, like, oh, Ed Newmeyer, the writer of Robocop's on Facebook, and I've seen these Bet fans before, so... send a message, and I think I spin it a bit like, hey Ed, we're in town making this we should link up. And coincidentally, as a bit of trivia, I guess, useless one, but Ed Newmeyer had actually, I think his partner at the time, or current partner, was director Tom Holland's assistant on Fright Night. So I think he genuinely believed we wanted to talk, and he visited the set of Fright Night. I think he genuinely thought that's why we were meeting with him. And then it kind of like, I think he quickly realised, like, oh shit, this is a Robocop net. And he made the fatal error at the end of our meal. We went out for a meal with him, basically. I think he paid for it as well, if I remember rightly, a Mexican. But anyway, he paid for it. And he made the fatal error of saying, you guys should probably do a Robocop documentary. And it's just like, uh-oh, you've triggered us. And I think he didn't realise within about a week I'd be sending him like documents like, oh, I've got these ideas, Ed, and let's do this and do that. So, again, right back on the point now, when we went out to shoot the documentary, we probably had no more than about 15 people confirmed at this point. And then thanks to the Herculean efforts of Gary, as you know, who's been on your show, my friend and producer, Gary Smart, and our production coordinator and friend, Mike Perez, We went over to the States with 15, 16 people confirmed. We came back from that 3-4 week trip with about 65 interviews. And again, this is part reason to why this has taken so long, because we thought nice little retrospective 30th anniversary with some details that we know people wouldn't know, or people who haven't been interviewed before. We came back with 65, of which there was a good percentage who came from Robocop 2, which I love, Robocop 3, which I do love in my own way, and Robocop the series. Subsequent to that, now we've ended up with, we're definitely over 100 people in this documentary, and it goes from the I say typical, it's really not good to put it this way, but of course we've got Paul Verhoeven, we've got Nancy Allen, we've got Kurtwood Smith, etc. But we've got like people who worked on the adverts in Robocop 1. We've got people who worked on the adverts in Robocop 3. I mean, so many people we've got in this documentary. And what it's actually amounted to, what we've realised in terms of the genesis of this project is, no, this isn't a 90-minute, 2-hour in-depth documentary. We've got every scene from the film, virtually every scene from the film, covered top to bottom. I say that, don't come back on me if that's not the case. But no, we have. I mean, it really is like, basically we're taking a unique approach to this documentary. And as you said, it's really in depth. What would be your traditional making of would be like a conception. This is how we came up with it. Production, casting, special effects, etc., topics. This is kind of morphed into a bit like those video commentaries you can get on a film. You could play the film side by side with this documentary, although actually the documentary would still be running 2 hours over the film.
Oh, right, okay.
But it works on like a scene-by-scene basis. So obviously we have got the genesis of the project. That in itself is a massive chunk of it. Going right into the details of Ed Newmeyer being on the set of Blade Runner, etc., coming up with the idea, meeting Michael Miner, the comparative aspects of Robocop and Terminator, because of course that's an Orion film, and another favourite of ours. So we kind of do that, but then it's as we've showcased with some previews we've put out there, the Ed 209 introduction sequence and Kinney's death kind of like combines everything. It's about the scene, but it's like the sound effects, the visual effects, the stop motion work. We've got Kevin Page, Mr. Kinney himself, and everything we've got. So we kind of just dissect the film. That's what we're pretty much doing at this point now. We've done it with Murphy's death scene as well. So yeah, it's basically what I like to think of this documentary as, is like we've teared the film to bits, and we're just assembling it back up together ourselves. And that's with obviously some of the visual effects that Eastwood, our editor and co-director, has been working on at the moment.
Cool. Viewers will have noticed that my video just crapped out during that. I've now fixed it. I'm not going to edit that because you don't need to see my face whilst Chris was.
I thought you were going to. I thought you were trying to like subtly show me your crotch.
Chris is on a different camera and will have seen my groin whilst I went to adjust the camera.
Just distracted me, and we're looking at facts and.
I'm not even recording this, Chris. Sorry about that, guys. I just said it. I forgot to plug in my camera and the battery ran out. It was supposed to be running from the main. Apologies. Yes. So you're going for a chronological kind of scene by scene basis. I've seen. Well, actually, I'll come back to what I was about to say. Initially, I understood, at the crowdfunding stage, this is going to be a single documentary about Robocop covering 2 and 3, and now you're looking at really a film for each film, essentially. Yeah. So it's a trilogy of.
It is, yeah. It's the Bible of the Robocop franchise, which to the average film lover might be questionable. To fans of the films. And I think the thing is, the Robocop franchise, I think that's what we were saying the last time, isn't it? It's an interesting franchise, I think, Robocop. I'm obsessed with it. It will be on my gravestone. It will be Chris Griffiths. Hopefully, loving husband, devoted father, hopefully one day. Favourite film, Robocop. Favourite TV show, Twin Peaks. Favourite artist, Prince. That's it. That's literally, you can pin all those things.
The Chris Griffiths biography.
Yeah. Dork.
Yeah, look, we can only afford 4 letters, so we've just gone for.
So, Oh no, that was a bit of a tangent. Then I'm trying to remember what the point was we were going to make. So, big fan of the franchise. You know, I grew up on these films, as noted by Orion executive and Robocop historian / expert Paul Salmon, who was an absolute diamond for us on this production. He said something which I tried to ask everyone questions on this documentary, and one of them was about the impact of Robocop on a younger audience who shouldn't have been watching it at the time. And I feel like, you know, for us and our generation, there's like a handful of films that we all saw, which was like a rite of passage at an early age. And it's like Robocop, Predator, Total Recall, Terminator, all those
the
big
usual
80s
suspects.
action films. Yeah. And it's interesting to me is that, you know, it's a hard R-rated, or in our case, 18-rated movie. You know, no kid should be watching this stuff. It's the far end spectrum of what's considered like, you know, bad taste in terms of violence, you know. And yet somehow we all ended up having copies of it in our lunchbox, or we would share. I know my mate lent me a video of double VHS of 1 and 2, and back in that day there was this kind of thing of like which I think I always say to my wife, which she switches off. But I do think it's like a lost art now, isn't it? The whole discovering films, everything's just there, readily available.
It's just there. Yeah, I'm sure they're going to have stories about like stealing your dad's Netflix password so you can watch the adult version of Netflix, which isn't nearly as interesting.
No,
as Purloin's VHS or like
exactly, yeah. And I remember I used to steal my dad's VHS of Robocop 2 back in the day in my little Nintendo carry case for my NES.
Nice.
And I would do it just to take it back home to my mum and put on bits. I just wanted to see bits. So anyway, that's kind of my justification now for talking about the sequels a bit, because the as we all know, because of this thing with the kids and everything, finding Robocop, that's kind of where the franchise went off. It's not even a, I'm saying this candidly, it's not a rock solid franchise. It's not the Star Wars franchise.
Oh God,
you know, Terminator at least had Terminator 2 to kind of carry it on, and then, you know, the subsequent sequels. Well, I still enjoy them, but are a mixed bag. Whereas the Robocop franchise is very much like, here's your rock solid, in my opinion, 5-star film, and then to the general audiences, it kind of it's just a straight drop off after that. But I say it in a biased sense. I think Robocop 2 is fantastic. I've subsequently watched 3 again recently, and it could very much be a childhood nostalgia thing, but that was the one we were allowed to watch as kids, which, you know, I'm always going to love it for that reason. And I think it has got some elements that are good. So people may question, like, you know, well, yeah, you're doing Robocop 1, fantastic, one of the greatest films ever made, but 2 and 3? Subsequently to our last conversation, I've been editing Robodoc 2 and Robodoc 3. Now this gets to the point. It was going to be one big documentary, and it's just too much to be one, because as it stands, the current cut of Robodoc 1 is about 4 hours long.
Right.
And I'd like to honestly think, and again, this is being biased, but you look at the effort going in with all the visuals, you will not know that it's been 4 hours upon watching it. Because this thing is loaded with justifiable visuals, courtesy of co-director Eastwood. You know, as I said, we've torn the film apart. He's been speaking to one of the visual effects guys, Kevin Kacheva, who worked on like Robocop's POV stuff.
Oh yes, you sent me some of that. Yeah, that's amazing. Like, because you just take for granted now that it's just done by computer, but it's not. It's like rotoscoped and hand drawn.
He says a great line, actually, Kevin Kacheva, in that clip. He says, someone asked me, you know, what computer did I use when making Robocop? And he says, I think the only computer I had was a calculator to do my taxes. Everything. And that's what's great about films of this era. You know, it really is like Scotch tape and chewing gum kind of thing. Of just, let's just stick bits together. And everything's real. And it's interesting, I think. That's what I think will broaden the appeal of this documentary, is that it's not just a celebration of the greatest film ever made, in my opinion. It's a celebration of... You're right. Yeah. It's a celebration, though, of like filmmaking of that era. You know, and in all aspects, from visual effects to prosthetics and everything like that, in stop motion especially, you know, it really is like, you can't help but watching, it's so cool. And it works in service of the film as well. Some people sort of criticise, you know, certain effects with the Robocop films are a bit dated, which I wouldn't deny it at all, but they work in service of the film. It's a film I consider has everything. And so to be able to kind of showcase all those things, and with the stuff that Eastwood's using, you know, even I think he said, like the beeps and boops that you hear of Robocop's program or whatever, his HUD, that isn't just, oh, we just ripped off a sound. No, they actually sort of programmed tunes into like an ARP 2600 or whatever it was, keyboard, synthesizers. So it's really interesting to hear all these people. Like you just look at a couple shots of the film and you realize how many layers are underneath of work. It's not just grab a camera, shoot a guy in a metal suit. So that's the level of detail we're going in with the first film. And I've been editing Robodoc 2. Which is 2.5 hours long in its current state. I've got an assembly print put together, and I'm really proud of this one because this is the first documentary I've done completely on my own. So whereas all our previous projects, Gary is the writer and he transcribes interviews, sends me a document of which I then translate that to video, cut here, cut there. Robodoc 1's been a collaborative effort with myself and Eastwood, and I will happily say this is why Eastwood now became co-director, because he is shaping the hell out of this thing, and the things he comes up with are just like, how did you think to put that there,
Yeah.
Whereas Robodoc 2, I've kind of been doing it on my Todd. We were going to outsource Robodoc 2 and 3, and I was really like, I don't want to let it go of it. I don't think anyone can do it as well as I could. And I hopefully can say that's kind of been proven right, because it's been a bit of a bitch to do Robodoc 2. It's interesting because it's not as much, I say it's not as much detail as 1, but it's interesting in terms of the structure and what I've been playing around with and trying to make sure that it flows as a whole documentary. So you talk about one topic, which brings us to this, on to the next one. It's not, I think that's the thing, even I take for granted what it takes to edit projects like this. And you have to create documents, transcribe interviews and whatnot. It's unbelievable, but we've got a lot on Robocop 2, should I say?
Well, this is the thing that interests me about this project. And again, I did come into it as a funder initially. We began our relationship after that. There was, up to a point, the kind of same old information that was available about Robocop. So I think all the fans who cared to look were all on the same page. So there was the Criterion DVD, which was just translated to the Region 2 DVD. They just cut and pasted that. And then the Blu-rays came out with like those new featurettes, which we all saw. There was a couple of books, and it seemed to be a lot of the same stuff over and over. And we all knew it, so we were at saturation point. Yeah. And I, for the longest time, thought, well, I know all the things about Robocop. But then having met you, and because I asked you, I talked to you about this project a lot when we were out working, because I really wanted to know.
Can't just say it's when we were in LA.
When we were in LA, darling.
When we were basking.
yeah, exactly. Sunning our ball sacks. But there is so much more to know, right? And that's one thing I've noticed. There's so much more to know. And you sent me the thing the other day about the visual effects, and I've learned loads of new stuff from the little bits you sent me. But most importantly, there has always been. Nobody gives a shit about Robocop 2 and 3. Now, personally, I'm not the biggest fan of Robocop 3, but I am a big fan of Robocop 2, and I think it's a very valid film, and I've discussed it at length before. I think I think it's a completely valid film. I think it's got its own agenda and stuff. And every book or thing you would get would be like, this much of the book is on Robocop, that much is on Robocop 2, and then that much is on Robocop 3. And Robocop 3 is really interesting because it comes at the end of Orion's kind of life. It was kind of troubled. There was all kinds of things going on. Fred Decker was kind of, God love him, bless him, was perhaps a bit out of his depth and stuff, and had a clear vision for that film that perhaps didn't come off. The second movie had Irving Kershner, so you have this kind of seasoned journeyman director come in and take over because Verhoeven's not coming in. Frank Miller, the comic book writer, is brought on. He writes this stupid whale of a script. Waylon Green has to come on. Blah blah blah. There's all this shit that you just never hear about, and now you got this is going to be setting the record straight really on those films.
Pretty much. I mean, that's the thing. And that kind of goes to my point about Chris, and what you're saying about we cut in a bit.
Skype issues. Social distance. There's probably just COVID-19 in the Wi-Fi or something. Here we go. I got you. Go on, man. You're good.
Do a pause. As we said, you're absolutely right. There's the book, The Definitive History, that came out of Robocop, and like that. And I remember there was a magazine that tied with it, SFX, where Robocop 2, Robocop 3. Series, and that's what I mean about the franchise as a whole. It's just interesting is that it's no matter what happened with all those sequels, Robocop still stands up. The first film's never been tarnished because of the sequels. I think it's interesting when things aren't great in terms of the sequels, because I think it's there's a story to be told. It's like, well, why didn't it work out well? And I think it's interesting. I've discovered really with editing the subsequent docs on 2 and 3 that each documentary we've got on each film almost reflects the films themselves. And so in that respect, we got like this 4-hour extravaganza celebrating what was a pretty revolutionary film for its time, I think, given its budget. We've got then a 2.5-hour documentary on Robocop 2 as it stands, where there's a kind of mixed feeling, and obviously it's been stated that the second film's got like dark tones and everything like that. There is a term that's used which I cannot think off the top of my head, but you can see it's on shaky ground, the second film, but there's still a lot to praise about it. So as an example, everyone seems to gravitate towards the fact that Robocane and the battles at the end are like the pinnacle of stop motion effects.
Yeah, and that's the master Phil Tippett again.
Exactly, and everyone praises the hell out of him, and there's interesting anecdotes. And I think in that documentary, that's certain parts we've got of Robocop 2 are covered top to bottom, and that's actually one segment there where we go from the conception and genesis of Robocane right through to the warehouse section and all the details that come in there, and then it jumps right into the final battle where pretty much I've been able to assemble an edit which talks from start to finish about the location. I mean, even the interesting thing, I can't remember, it was one of the stop motion artists who said about, he based Robocop 2's walk on some big bloke who came into the bar, who had a bar he was in, who had this real frame to him, and he was kind of shaking his body around. And I think things like that are interesting. It's like he's utilising a real life story into how the Robocane walks and everything. So honestly, it's covered top to bottom. We go into the deleted scenes, which I think Robocop 2 is the most interesting for, because of the amount of script rewrites and everything like that, the multiple colour pages. We've managed to salvage some. Well, Paul Salmon gave us about 4 hours worth of behind-the-scenes footage from Robocop 2. And as a fanboy, it's just like, oh my god, it's so cool, And
that stuff just wasn't around. I remember seeing deleted, like VHS versions of deleted scenes on Robocop Archive 100 years ago, but that was it. And when that DVD box set came out, it was like, Robocop 1 is a cut and paste of the Criterion, Robocop 2 and 3, go fuck yourself.
No, exactly. I mean, subsequently, coincidentally, the year after we shot Robodoc, we actually jumped on board, because in the States you've got the Scream Factory versions of Robocop 2 and 3, and they've done a pretty stand-up job, to be fair. And it's nice to, it's always great when you look upon a label well, and it's like, good on you, you've done Robocop 3 as well.
Yeah, because no one else was going to do it till those guys did it, right?
Exactly, and it was a little bit of a kick in the balls. It was like, oh well, I'm supposed to be making the first ever documentary on these. But they're good, solid pieces, and they've got some great content on there. They've got a fantastic commentary from 3 filmmakers from the UK. But I've been watching those religiously as I've been editing Robodoc 2 and 3 to kind of be like, right, what did they get that we didn't? And I'm pretty certain we've got the majority of what they got and much more. I mean, I think what was amazing for me in terms of fanboy moments was the fact that we located Gabriel Damon, Hobb, from 2, who's never been interviewed before. I mean, we've got 4 members of the gang. We've got Galen George, we've got Tom Noonan, and the interesting one, and in terms of Robodoc 2, is Michael Medeiros, who played Katzo, the Elvis-looking chap, as I told him. And what a storyteller. He features so prominently in Robodoc 2. He knows so much about the film and the production. He's got such good things to say. So that's the interesting thing, I think, you find when you do these documentaries. You could have a lead member who, to them, it was just another job. And people have got varying opinions on 2 and their experiences in it, to be frank. But he enjoyed himself, but he had his ear to the ground, so he could tell us so many things, which has been a blessing for me in terms of stitching the project together. It's like, I need someone to talk about this. Michael Medeiros. I'm trying to think who else we've got for 2 now. I only edited it a couple of weeks ago, but it's almost like fresh out of my mind. Yeah,
the thing that I've noticed is that, I mean, you've been like, obviously I was following the Facebook page back in the day, but you've been sending me clips and we've talked about it a great deal, and it's fucking comprehensive. I mean, we'll get to Peter Weller That's our discussion, and we know Pete Willis stance on Robocop.
Comprehensive.
Yes. Rob Bottin works in real estate, won't talk to anybody.
Nope.
You know, Irvin Kershner is dead. Like, the people that aren't in it are like the notorious holdouts.
Yeah.
Or they're dead.
Yes.
To be blunt. Like, I mean, you've got like the bitches from the Bitches Leave scene, and you've got you've got everybody.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? Everyone's got good, valid stories to tell, and again, in a biased sense, you know, anyone who walked in through that door when we were shooting that documentary, I was practically dry humping their leg. I worked on I worked on the Newcomb advert on Robocop. Did you?
Well, that's some of the most interesting stuff as well. That's the stuff you don't hear about, like, behind the scenes, because there's, you know, great little VFX moments in that Newcomb ad and.
Exactly, and I think it's just great to, and again, that's what the first one's got. Like I said, it's just we've taken the film, broken it apart, and we've just taken everything. You know, we build everything back up from the ground. You know, in terms of just like dissecting it. But yeah, like, you know, for people from 2, like I said, we've got the whole gang. We got Belinda Bauer, Dr. Fax, which was a really interesting one.
She left acting, didn't she? Did she retrain?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe she's a psychiatrist now.
Yeah, I think she's some kind of psychiatrist. She's Australian, isn't she, originally?
Yeah, and I think she might be going on to robotics next.
Shit.
Oh wait, no, that's the film.
Jesus Christ.
But no, I mean, I was worried initially with Robocop 2. Like, I mean, like we said, we never had intent to sort of do a full-blown documentary on the sequels. We just happened to have. When it got to that moment, I was a bit apprehensive of what we had. Did we have enough to tell a story for Robocop 2? I've been proven completely wrong. We very, very, very much have. You know, and like I said, it's 2.5 hours, and I think it's got a great flow. That's a bit egotistical of me to say that, but I put a lot of blood, sweat and tears into making sure I could shape something that was an interesting story, you know, your conception right through to the final battle, and then final thoughts, of course, which again is an honest mixed bag from people, you know, but then people do kind of, you know, come in and say, but look, it was good for this reason and that reason. It just didn't work with the audiences back in the day. And a great quote, I think, is Phil Tippett saying that John Davison said at the time against a review was, they wanted a film out in the summer of 1990 called Robocop 2, and they got a film that came out in the summer of 1990 called Robocop 2.
Can't argue with that, really, can you?
Exactly, no. So that's the thing. So I've done the edit on that, and I'm currently working now on the assembly of Robodoc 3, which I was maybe a bit ahead of myself in thinking like, yes, I've achieved the assembly of Robodoc 2, and, you know, let's do 3, and I don't think we got as many people for that. And going back over all the footage we've got for 3, I'm like, no, it's going to be at least 2 hours. Robocop 3.
Well, good. I want that. I want to watch that. Like,
yeah.
You know, even if you hate that movie, there's an interesting story there.
No,
and
there
more
is.
Robocop
And
content. You know?
I tell you what, stylistically, like I said, these documentaries differ. I'm probably repeating the hell out of myself by saying this. 1 is a 4-hour extravaganza celebrating a fantastic film. 2 is a 2.5-hour documentary covering what is an interesting topic of a film which should have probably done well, but it didn't do well. 3 then is interesting because we got a fantastically candid interview from Fred Decker, which we sadly weren't there for, but obviously wrote the questions. I think I spoke to him on the phone, which was kind of like a fanboy moment in advance. And bless his heart, man. Your heart bleeds for the bloke. I mean, this is a guy who candidly admits, I'm the guy who did Night of the Creeps. That bombed. I'm the guy who did Monster Squad. That bombed. I got a second chance by doing Robocop 3. That bombed. And he just takes it in his stride, man. He's so honest about these things. And he tries... I say he doesn't have to try and justify his reasoning, but he just sort of says, look, I tried this approach. I thought this was good. There's things... And he basically holds his hand up and says, look, if I could go back and do it again, I would. And it's just... You feel for the bloke, but it's a really good interview, and it's very in depth as well about, you know, why he chose to do certain things.
And he's had the Predator now as well. I mean,
Fred Decker, and this was pre-Predator as well. That interview, and
Sorry?
and this is pre-Predator as well. We did this interview, so of course
they do can't catch a break, and because there is some stuff with him in the definitive history book. He's really fucking candid and honest about it, and I just respect him immensely for that.
No, I do, and I think that's why it just doesn't matter what your thoughts may be on the film. Watch and listen to what the filmmaker said, and maybe there's going to be a lot of interest. I've had a few people, including Gary, say they're most interested in hearing what is to be said about 3, and yeah, maybe because it was such a disaster of a film, you know, it might be more interesting to be like, but why? Why was it such a disaster?
Those are interesting stories, man. That's fucking, you know, Hearts of Darkness or whatever, isn't it? Like
exactly.
You know.
Yeah. And so we've got Fred there, and then again, in terms of exclusives against, you know, other people who've done these sort of things, documentaries, we've managed to get Nico, Remy Ryan, which was really interesting, and she's very cool. Her interview, admitting that Robocop was her grandmother's favorite film. What's cool about her, in fact, is that she's not just a child actor who came onto this franchise. She clearly states she was a fan of the films and watching them like us on VHS prior to 3. So God knows what that must have been like for her getting onto a film to actually, you know, work with Robocop. And then I think some of my favourites again highlights Robert Burke. So now we can go into the fact that there's a certain notable person of this franchise who's not present. Although I will go over that in a minute, that he is. But Robert Burke, who's not been interviewed before, is going through his footage the other day. He is one funny fucker, this bloke. And his interview is beyond entertaining. It's candid about issues with the suit and how uncomfortable it was. But everything, you know, again, everyone kind of doesn't try to justify. They basically say, all of them for 3, we were trying to make this film. We did our best. It didn't work out. But we had fun doing it, and it's a real. It's almost got a bit of a feel good. It's definitely it's the PG-13 documentary of the Robodocs. And as I said, these documentaries reflect the films themselves. But he's great. Bruce Locke, who played Otomo, running through his interview the other day in terms of transcribing it and putting it in the right places. He's amazing. I mean, it's about 40 minutes excluding the questions. His interview, and he doesn't repeat himself. He doesn't go over the same thing. He just tell all, and again, you know, he had a great time working on the film. He's got some nice little Rob Bottin anecdotes, which I find interesting, the whole Rob Bottin thing, because we didn't get him. He's notoriously unavailable to the public eye now. But obviously we know that it didn't, you know, he clashed with Paul Verhoeven on the first film, you know, all the makers and whatnot. But then I don't think I ever really acknowledged that he worked on the sequels until we found in the behind-the-scenes footage for 2. He
designed the notorious jetpack.
Yeah.
You know, which is an extension of his design. If you look at that jetpack... I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. If you look at that jetpack aesthetically... What a phrase! If you look at that jetpack aesthetically...
Look at that jetpack.
It's like... Oh, Sonia, let's be appalling. But it fits the aesthetic of Robocop. It might be a dumb idea, and it's because fucking Rob Bottin designed it. He was bolting onto his own designs.
They're candid about, like, you know, what I've made sure I've done, and I think this kind of jumping the gun a bit going into this part of the conversation, but I understand that this has taken a long time, this project, but one thing I have the utmost confidence in is that, like, if we didn't do this documentary, no one else would do a documentary, and with that being us all doing it, we know what questions to ask. We're not just going to ask for the standard, so what was it like working on this film? Okay, you know, what was it like about the release? No. We all know what sort of touch points there are about each film. So I think the questions were kind of lined up of like, right, let's talk about Jetpack Gate. You know
hashtag Jetpack Gate.
You know, and again, it gets a bit of a mixture of responses. So, I mean, you know, we've got like the making of things. We've got some funny anecdotes like... this is a prime example of Robert Burke, where I think the crew member said that the design of the jetpack didn't allow him to hold his head up, like look up straight. So when you're going along like that horizontally, you can't look forward. He's got to look down. So there's this whole like thing of like, well, maybe you should be flying higher and this and that. And I think he says a crew member said to him while they were filming the blue screen key for that sequence, Rob, can you hold your head up? And he's like, no, motherfucker, I can't. And then, like, people basically say, like, the idea's there, and the whole... Fred Decker actually says, which is great about 3, and it's so true, in terms of Robocop in general. And it kind of hit me, I don't think I'd ever really acknowledged this until it was said at the time. With Robocop, maybe the reason that the first film works well, and the rest doesn't, it's a complete story.
Yes,
gets killed,
true.
Fucked over by the system, killed by a ruthless gang, goes out, gets revenge, and furthermore... the most important thing, regains his identity. You know, that's it. that itself is a complete story. And where do you really go after that? And I'm sure there are ideas out there, you know, and there's been, you know, Corporate Wars, the unused or unwritten Robocop 2 script, or, you know, unfilmed. So one of his justifications for such things in Robocop 3, and obviously based on Frank Miller's script, is like, well, okay, what do we do? Let's give him some gadgets. You know what I mean? Like, let's pimp him up. So you got the arm gun, which is cool. I'll be fair.
And again, Robo Teen, and it fits the look of the character and stuff. I mean, I'm not justifying its existence, but it's the aesthetic is right. It's that kind of shiny black, you know.
Nice long shiny black. But no, it's you know, and so that's what I mean. And maybe it's just a biased sense. I'm kind of looking at these things, going, well, yeah, fair enough, cool. You know, it's nice to hear these things and whatnot. So I'm very excited to see what the assembly of Robocop 3 will be like. To be fair, this edit, I think it'll be interesting. Everyone's pretty honest about it. We very much touch on the whole PG-13 aspect of the film, you know, and I think most people know why it became PG-13, because the kids had discovered and taken ownership of the character, and Ryan at the same time were having their financial issues. So what do? Let's open up the market. And this is not an exclusive situation. This has happened in many other.
Oh god, yeah! Fucking Rambo got a cartoon, for fuck's sake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you know, it's an experiment that just didn't work out well. So it's hard to imagine, I think, an alternate universe where the Robocop franchise kind of did this or carried on. Yeah. It's just what it is, and I don't mind it, and I still love the films. So yeah, this is, you know, very much this project's a dream of a project, and I think I said last time, it's also the biggest nightmare of a project, because there's a lot of people waiting on this project, and I feel like there's a lot of eyes, not literally in the room with me, but they're, you know, with me at all times, which, you know, it's understandable.
Yeah, of course.
It's good to see there's demand for this thing. You know, we're like bloody Nuke of documentaries.
Well, look, yes, Nuke. Let's kind of just to cover some stuff, because obviously again I've declared my bias, and I got to sort of like hold a green screen whilst you interviewed Mark Goldblatt, so be involved in the smallest way makes me very happy. Yeah. I'm so excited. Honestly, I'm so excited about the one bit I did. Like,
no, well, that's the thing actually, and funny you should mention that, I guess, as well, with the duration of time it's taken to make this documentary. We've not wasted time subsequently. In terms of like, we're here now 3-4 years later, but in that time we've acquired so many more interviews and content. So we're utilising this extra bit of time. Well,
I do want to, just to mitigate for you based on what I've seen. And you mentioned Eastwood earlier. So what's happening here is you have interviews. The style of this doc was all shot on green screen.
Yes.
For interviews, and then there are very extensive and involved motion graphics. So, just to discuss, I've seen bits, some completed sections of the film, which probably don't represent final product or whatever, but you've shown me quite a few bits. And when a person from one of the given films is discussing a scene, there are motion graphics of storyboards, bits of scripts, behind the scenes photos, you know, all this stuff, and really great bits of sound design that play into it, and the soundtrack as well. So the reason. Yeah. Well, I mean, you are both people with full-time jobs who are working in this in your spare time, and there's this really involved, dense process of animation going over the top, right? Like, and it fucking looks great. That's why I got to admit, before I met you guys, I was a bit like, what the fuck happened to that film? You know what I mean? I was just like, what the fuck? But like, now I met you and spoke, you know, Gary was like, fucking Robodoc. When's Robodoc coming out, Chris?
Well, that's I mean, that's the thing. I mean, It's weird, man. I'll tell you what, I'll quickly interject on this particular topic. I was walking in the park with my wife the other day, like every day, basically. This whole thing about the length of time on this, to put it straight, my feelings towards this project and what we do is naturally that massive sense of pride. You know, to be making a definitive tribute to my all-time favourite film and its franchise, you know, is a dream come true. It's that sense of, got there first, you know.
Right.
No one's going to fuck with us now at this point in terms of, you know, we're going to do this with Robocop. No. But I'll be honest in saying that I said to my wife, it's weird. My feelings towards doing this is like, there's that 30% certainly in the last couple of years, where it's that massive sense of pride, you know, and God, I'm so excited to be doing it and fanboy. I'd say then the other 70% is actually that of stress and angst about the fact it's not done. But that's, you know, it's a very black and white situation, I think, this whole thing. And as we've tried sort of putting out to people as often as we can, yes, we have got full-time jobs. Our lives have changed dramatically since when we went out and shot that documentary in 2016. Subsequently, I've been married in 2017, and I had a new full-time job as a videographer, corporate videographer, but which I've succeeded in, which I'm very glad about, you know, but it's obviously taken up a lot more time than what I might have been doing at the time of production for the film. Obviously now, in light of this pretty notable situation of COVID-19, I would say that percentage has sort of started to drift back to something like 60-40, maybe even 50-50 of I'm 50% proud of it, I'm 50%... it's that nightmare thing, you know, I'm having dreams where I lose my teeth. But I think what we've been saying for a long time, and when we've done articles and updates where we've tried to sort of, you know, drip feed people some look, we are doing this, you know, and there's plenty of other things I've seen out there that haven't put much out, and I don't hold that to them. But there's things even I invested in before we even started our first documentary, Hellraiser. You know, I was a pledgee on a Kickstarter. But even back then, I didn't kind of... maybe because I got an understanding of how these things go, I wasn't kind of going... you know, I'm still waiting on my Blu-ray for a certain project. But we've always used the excuse, or we've always stated, you know, we are full-time workers, we've got full-time jobs, and we're putting a lot of effort into this, so it's going to take its time. We apologise it's taken a long time, but, you know, we have got full-time work. Quite often then, I'm kind of thinking in the back of my mind, it's like, we just saying that for face value. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, it's like, yeah, I've got full-time work, you know, I've got a wife, and I've got a really annoying little Chihuahua pug cross dog. But you know what now? With this situation with COVID-19, I can give you a perfect example there. September last year, I was really, really, really busy with my full-time job. And somehow, working like sort of 13, 14-hour days, I felt compelled, like work was my drug. So I was batting out chunks of Robodoc 2. Within about the space of a couple months, I'd achieved the first half-an-hour edit of Robodoc 2. So like, okay, good. You know, I've picked it up again. In light of this situation now with COVID-19, in the space of about 3 weeks, where my work has been a little bit up in the air at times, obviously, like for everyone it was for the first 2 weeks, I've managed to assemble the 2.5 hours, so the other 2 hours basically of Robodoc 2. So it was that one time where I could go, you know what, we weren't just saying it at face value, you know, with full-time jobs. It really was that case, you know, and so I'll do everything in my power to do what I can in my free time with the edits. The problem is, they're so big, these projects, you both yourself and your Mac shits its pants when you open a project for Robodoc. And as you'd know as an editor, or any editors out there, you know,
the struggle when Adobe Premiere screams and the fan kicks up on your laptop. It's just like,
mate, it literally, it's like my fucking laptop's going to go off into orbit sometimes when I open
I know that
project.
feel, my friend, when you've got a big bastard of a project.
Exactly, and it's like, and I kind of, it's like the analogy I use. It's like a bit like a series. You've got to get about, a big series at least, you've got to get about 2 or 3 or 4 even episodes in, 4 hours worth you've got to dedicate before you pick up that momentum, that flow. All right, I'm involved in it now, I'm committed, I know everything, I can almost like guess at this point now where, oh hang on, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said that, actually I'll merge them together. When you first go into a project, even if it's been a couple days, you're just kind of like, where was I? And I've got it well organised, the projects. I've learnt from Eastwood, who's like, oh, you know, I'll candidly say the master of editing and being organised, which I am not. I'm following in his footsteps. But even then, you know, it's you crap yourself when you open these projects, like, oh God, where to start? So I've now found, you know, that this COVID-19 situation has kind of got me back in there. I've probably put at least in that, well, with all those first 3 weeks or so, I'd probably say there's at least about 6-7 hours a day of editing straight through on all them. And now I'm capitalising on weekends and everything because we can't go out. Instead, I'll throw in my flat. But
I've had a definite increase in WhatsApps from Chris recently.
Yeah,
I've had an uptick of like WhatsApps from Chris or Facebook messages from Chris, and it's like more. I've done this.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I'm terrible for that. You know, showing like what I've done.
Oh, mate, I am.
Whereas like
not fucking complaining over here. Don't worry.
Whereas you've got like and Eastwood understandably is a very in terms of his editing, he takes a lot of pride in his work. So in terms of like when I'll say like, oh, can we drip feed this out? He's like, no. And you know what? He's right. You know, it's with two different personalities in that respect. But you know, I'm proud that I can kind of assemble the blurb in terms of Robocop 2, but like, you know, with him, he's putting together these animations, and I've had a stab at doing some animations myself, and I know my limits. I know I'm all right at it, but just as I think, look what I've done, that fucker comes along and he's got film reels doing this. He takes a character doing that, and I don't know, I said this to him the other day, I don't know where the fuck he even I don't even know how he fucking thinks about some of the things he puts on screen. Okay, so we'll have like an image of Pete Coran. Okay, cool. The background is going to disappear from behind Pete Coran in this old 1987 photo. That background's then going to turn to a script. The script then turns to that. Then it'll morph into the storyboard. Then we're going to show like a glass table with a light coming underneath. Which I don't know how he does it. Where you even think that. But
his work is amazing. Like what I've seen, it's incredible. I've never spoken to or met Eastwood, but the work he's done is fucking amazing. It makes it so watchable.
Yeah, and so that's what I mean. That's why I just think if we keep drip feeding out little nuggets like that to people, and we explain our situation, it will hopefully get. And I think actually we've been quite successful for the most part. I think a majority of people who follow us, who have listened and read to the stories, because God knows there's probably a time on Facebook where it's like, there's life on Robodoc Facebook page, go. I'd like to think majority of people are kind of taking the time to read through like interviews we've done or whatever, like video updates we've done or statuses we've put, and said like, okay, cool, fine. And I think there are a few, there's some amazing fans I've encountered doing this project, and some of them in particular, I think they're give them a shout out. We've got these two guys, Adam Steins and Brad Terrell, and both of them have been really supportive, you know, and will message me once in a while, and they love the fact that we're doing this. It's like, fellow Robodoc. But
those guys subscribe to this channel as well, so they're probably
there you go
this.
Then double shout out. Yeah. So but Brad sent me this Japanese book on Robocop called the Tech Photo File, I think it's called, or something like that. Anyway, and that's got shitloads of pics I've never seen before and everything. And that's what we're doing as well. We're collating. We are literally at this point the Bible of Robocop in terms of materials now.
Yeah, I think it would be hard for anything else to be any kind of more definitive, really, from what I've seen.
No.
We are in the last 10 minutes, Chris. I'm sorry to rush you. Now there is we need to talk about Peter Weller, but you talked about some material coming up. What do you want? What do you have to say? What do you want to fit in? Because I don't want to cut you off in any way.
No, that's fine. I'll talk about Peter Weller then. Yeah, everyone's probably watching this going, definitive. I've got Peter Weller.
I wouldn't argue that's from any fault of your own. I mean, he doesn't do a lot of stuff relating to Robocop. He's retrained. You know, he did the KFC stuff, but I'm sure he was well healed for that. You know, and fair play to him. Just to be clear, obviously Robert Burke, Richard Eden.
Yep.
Not both Paige Fletcher, but I don't think he's probably in any hurry to talk about Robocop either.
Prime Directive. No, I think we tried to reach out for him to almost spike to heal the Peter Weller situation. Like, we'll get Paige Turner instead. Paige Turner's a porn star.
I don't know what you mean. No, I've never heard of her, Chris. Don't know what you're talking about.
We'll get a porn star in place of Peter Weller. I think we did attempt, but I don't think he was. He wasn't reachable at all. But no, the whole thing, and many people probably know in terms of this project now, we never got Peter Weller. God knows we tried every which way possible through John Davison, Ed Newmeyer, Paul Verhoeven, Nancy Allen. All of them tried to reach out. He's an interesting character, I think, Peter Weller. So interesting because we're obviously been massively disheartened and what a prick, you know, all these years if he wouldn't be involved in the project. But then we've actually been fortunate enough, thanks to an event in Manchester called For the Love of Sci-Fi last November or December. We were able to showcase which was a Robocop-centric kind of event, which was originally supposed to have Ray Wise, who unfortunately couldn't make it, but Peter Weller, a giant life-size Ed 209, so which we're like, well, do you want a 20-minute preview of Robodoc? So we did showcase it there. To which then the organizer said, "Oh, do you want to interview Peter Weller because you know your stuff?" Or he said, "No, you've got Peter Weller then in this doc." And we're like, "No, we didn't get any luck." And the reasons are he would only do it for X amount. Fair enough, he's an actor. Everyone else has been very gracious to have come along on their own accord on this project because we have very low budget. £35,000 we made, Kickstarter money, has been put completely into this project, including a lot of our own money by this point, because we're not doing this for profit, we're doing this, for the love of the game. So we never got Peter Weller. We gave us his blessings to sort of say there's plenty of stuff out there, use it yourselves. So Harry Knowles gave us a podcast interview with him. We've got behind the scenes audio interviews with him, and when you mix that with some of the behind the scenes footage from 2 and other interviews we've got, archive materials directly from people, excuse me, it's quite hard to not know. It's quite hard to notice he's not there. And interestingly, I've found editing Robocop 2. It's amazing how these films are named after a character. And he is the main character. He is the poster boy, and yet you wouldn't believe actually how much more there are to all these films. He's the main guy, but it's amazing how much more there is about these films, the characters, the bad guys, the story, and everything. So
and he, like you say, he's still, from what I've seen, he's still very present. Because there's tons of voiceover from interview. Like I'm not wanting to repeat what you've just said, but he's very present. It's not like there's no vacuum.
No.
Because there's loads of stuff I haven't heard before, and I've heard a lot of Robocop shit. People will be stunned to learn. Like he's very there, and so new material, and he's talking, and he's given it his blessing, hasn't he? He just doesn't want to do it. Which...
No, he has, and well, as I said, we got to actually meet him. Got to go up on stage with him when he didn't know who we were at this event, and so I was shitting my pants the whole time. And he's a force of nature, to put it lightly, as a character, which is. It weighs up against why he chooses to do what he does. He's very, very opinionated and sort of strong-minded. And in a weird way, I've kind of grown to like him a lot more in light of this. So we got to do a quick stand-up interview with him on stage at this event. I think I managed to get about 2 or 3 words in because he just talked. And then afterwards we came off stage and Eastwood said... I'm going to tell him who we are, because he didn't know we were the Robodoc guys, the guys whose documentary he wasn't going to be in without, And I was just like, no, let's leave that on a cool note. We got a wicked photo with him, we got to fist bump Robocop himself, leave it as that, Eastwood, as I said, is a different personality to me. He's like, no, I'm going to tell him. So he went up behind Peter Weller, tapped him on the shoulder. I'm kind of there, teaser in the background, going, and he's like, oh, just to let you know, we're the Robodoc guys. To which he turned around and said, you didn't film that, did you? The thought crossed our mind, trust us. No, we didn't, and we respect his wishes. The next day at this event, I went and got my poster signed by him, which was a completest thing, because I've got a nice, massive, 60-person scribble. I'm
surprised
poster.
You can see the fucking ink underneath.
To be honest, yeah. It's a bit like... It looks like a Jackson Pollock piece now.
Yeah, it's just a maelstrom of Sharpie.
Yeah, but he said, oh, you're the director of Robodoc, and to which I'm like, yes, I am. And he said, look, if you can get the money together, I will be in it. But I've tried reaching out subsequently, and, I'd love for him to be in it. And I feel, to put it candidly, I think it's his loss if he's not in this, extravaganza now. But
yeah, but it's his choice. That's the choice he's made, I guess.
It's been a nice, happy, formal handshake with him, and he knows who we are. And I've spoken to him subsequently on email, and he's a stand-up bloke, but it is what it is. And to be honest, I'm so confident in what's there already without him that it's not the end of the world, as I thought it would be at the start. But
as I can imagine, it probably felt like that. Yeah, but again, from what I've seen, there's no vacuum at the centre. We need to wrap up, Chris. I'm sorry, but
we'll have to do
Robodoc
Robodoc
something
2
you want to mention Eh?
We'll have to do Robodoc 2 too.
You're
Just like the documentaries.
Robocop 2,
Maybe it's just me,
Robocop
it's
2, 3. You've got, I think, we just talked, but by the time this comes out, you will have released some material, we hope. Would you like to tell us about that real quick?
Yeah, of course. I've managed to sway Eastwood into putting out an update, so we'll be showcasing probably now or then, depending when this video is released. We'll be showcasing a new scene from Robodoc, which is basically showing the scene-by-scene dissection nature of it, talking basically about Robocop's HUD and all the details that go with it, and Robocop's gun with the gun range shooting scene. And there's an effect I've only seen thus far on Eastwood's story on Instagram, and it's like, fuck me. Wow. Okay, this is interesting. You've gone full on like Hollywood CGI with this shit.
Nice.
It's very quick, but when you see it, I think, as a fan, it's a very cool and effective thing he's done. And we're going to utilize this as an update to kind of reiterate to people who, I think a lot of people know this already, but as discussed on here, with an image or two, that no, there's Robodoc 2 and there's Robodoc 3. We're not making you guys one documentary now. We're making you 3, of which, as it stands, along with the special features on the series, the comics, the games, will probably ultimately create a 10 to 11 hour package. So it might justify a little bit more, and if we can sway some more people to understand our situation at the moment, or, with what we're going through on this project, I hopefully think this will do the trick. We're going to utilize this as an opportunity to kind of give out a bit of behind the scenes info on this documentary. Okay, like, oh, look at you see these fancy things we're doing? This is why it's taken so long, but hopefully you guys will understand why we're doing it, and understand, understanding all that stuff.
Yeah, well, I hope this will be a good companion piece. If this comes out after your piece, as it's planned to, I'll put the link to what you've just discussed in the description, so people can go straight through. And hopefully, if you are into Robodoc, follow Robodoc, this has been enlightening to you. Is there anything, Chris, I know, is there anything you wanted to say that you haven't said that you want to talk about?
Oh, famous last words. 2 hours later. Thanks, Chris. No, I suppose, just to let the fans know out there, we're working our asses off on this. In a very strange way. I know this whole COVID-19 thing's been probably terrible for a lot of people. In regards to this project, it has been a blessing in disguise. And I think, like a lot of creators out there at the moment, I think it's wow, I feel like I can get philosophical here. I think this is a period to kind of try and focus on getting those things done that you might not be able to get done on your normal days, if you've got the capacity to, like go make a video about being groomed by a dog groomer. Exactly. Just a random example that you picked out the air. Yeah. And that is the bath I was bathed in. And I was going to say, on location.
My lady has relocated me to the dog grooming shed whilst it's fallow. So
when we get the opportunity down the line, be sure to do the making of. We'll handle the making of that video.
Of course, at least a
6-hour documentary.
Paul Salmon has all my rushes. He'll be giving them.
How the fuck did he have them?
I don't know.
I just
emailed them to him. He was just like, "Who is this guy? Why is that a man being bathed?" Okay, well, thank you so much, Chris. I hope this has been enlightening for everybody. Thank you for coming back and doing it again after last time. So, Chris, I will put all the links to Chris's stuff below. You can see beneath Chris's name over there, pointing correctly. You can see it says his Instagram and his Twitter, so you can go follow him on those. And Verde's are the usual places, and you can see all my shit below. So we'll be back again with something else next week. Live streams every Thursday, and the odd gaming ones at the weekend as well. Thank you very much. Be lucky. Goodbye, Chris. Thank you, mate, for your time. Mate. See you soon.
Wicked. Mwah.
Bye.
Bye.
Support your 7th or 8th favourite YouTube channel by buying crap, tat, junk, hogwash and filth at redbubble.com/people/Valverde shop.
Naroda, slawiać się brytru da